welcome back to Bookview TV. Now, it's been quite an interesting program with Congressman Keith Ellison. He's from Minnesota, he's a Democrat. He's the first Muslim member of the United States Congress, and he's written a fabulous book called My Country, 'Tis of Thee. We continue our discussion, taking a look at his decision to actually run for political office. Your account of 1995's Million Man March in Washington, D.C. was stirring. And I have to ask, I mean, I'm reading about your riding on the metro into the city that day. Why was that event so informative and important to you, sir?
Well, because if you take yourself back to, say, like 1989 in America, what you would see is that we would have gone through a civil rights movement. We would have gone through a Black Power movement. We would have seen the rise of Black mayors in many cities. And yet, the economic and political and social fortunes seem to not pay the dividends we expected or hoped for. And so there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of dissatisfaction in the African American community, and so many problems that we were facing not only have to do with our interaction with the larger American scene, but also internally. For example, crime rates, fatherless households, a whole set of problems. And I think there are a lot of young men like me who wanted to do something about it, really wanted to do something about it. And so the Million Man March, gave me a sense that, something really could be done about it in a constructive way. Because if you can muster the will of 1 million or more men and capture the attention of a nation to say, let's address some of these problems, that may not solve the problem, but you can see the solution in there if the proper organization were to be had. So to me, it was a transformative moment.
And you then went on to form your own public service law firm and threw your hat into the ring to become a state representative, where you suffered your only, thank goodness, defeat thus far. How important was that first campaign to you in learning the bare-knuckle nature of politics?
Well, that first campaign was essential to my understanding and set me on the path, because as an activist, I realized that it was enough to complain about things that weren't going right, maybe propose some solutions, but the real issue was to be uncompromising about the issue that you were passionate about. Could be the environment, could be civil rights, could be anything. But when you walk into the political arena, you actually have to come up with some solutions. Their responsibility shifts. You have to actually talk about what you're going to do if you win this office. And that was an important moment in my life when I went from an activist to a person who was trying to engage in statecraft. I'd recommend to anyone that, try to put on the hat of the person who doesn't just raise the issue, but actually is responsible for a solution.
And you eventually went on and won, and then Representative Sabo from your district announced his retirement, and you essentially had 5 minutes to declare your intention to run for the Congress and sit for an interview. Describe what was going through your mind in that process.
Well, I was filled with anticipation. I didn't know if I was making the right decision, but I knew that, if I was upset about the United States engagement in the Iraq War, if I was upset about the stagnating possibilities for the American working class, then the way to get that done would be to jump in here. And I decided to just jump. I leaped before I looked, and I don't regret it, because ever since that time, from that moment to this, I've been fighting and working on the same issues, and that is peace, that's working class prosperity, environmental sustainability, and civil and human rights for all. So that's what we started with, and that's what we're still doing, and that's what we will always be doing. And so, I was sort of wondering, okay, what's going to happen? And I told myself, the outcome you can't determine, but you can determine whether you're going to dump in now. And so I did. And here we are.
And not only here we are, but there were some tremendous lessons learned on that campaign trail. After you got the caucus endorsement and then the primary and general election, your ability to turn out voters from immigrant communities appears to have been what actually helped to tip the election, at least that first one, in your favor. That had to feel very rewarding to you. How did that actually unfold?
Well, I tell you, after we won the party endorsement, it looked like things were going to be good because this is a very Democratic area, and Democrats have been winning in this area for 40 years. Problem came up though that once it looks like you're really viable and you really might be the one, the press is going to move up and start really examining who you are. I had some old unpaid parking tickets, running back and forth to court, didn't get them paid. That didn't look good. And people began to really sort of scrutinize my record in a whole new way because I really had a chance to win.
Not to mention the fact that the folks on the right-hand side, were also playing directly from the Karl Rove playbook, and you were being attacked on a whole new, different front because of your faith and everything else. What was that like?
Well, thank you for mentioning that because, my opponents attacked me for being a Muslim. No other reason. He's a Muslim, therefore he's a jihadi. He's a racist. He doesn't believe in women's equality. He doesn't believe in the equality of all people. Which none of those things are true, but that's what they hit me with. Anyway, so we did a poll, and the pollster came back and said, "Good news and bad news. Bad news first. If you don't do something, you're going to lose, even with the party endorsement." I said, the good news is that given your brand, given who you are and what you've done, you can expand the primary electorate, which is something very difficult to do for conventional politicians. But you can do it because there are certain communities that will have an affinity with you that will come to the polls because they have a sense of making history. So if you want to win, you got to go sign up 10,000 people and get them to the polls on election day. And that is exactly what we set out to do. We went to all communities. We went to New American communities, went to Somali community, Latino community. We went to the Russian community. We went to students. We went to women. We went to artists. We went to people in labor unions. We went and talked. We went door to door and had a very grassroots campaign. Didn't spend any money on TV because we put it all into our field campaign, and the net result was that we won very handily, and my opponents, who were very worthy, ended up calling me to concede pretty early in the evening. So that was an amazing moment.
Well, Minnesota has such a rich history of truly great progressive politicians. I mean, Vice Presidents Hubert Humphrey and Walter Mondale, who, by the way, delivered the commencement address at my university graduation, and Senator Paul Wellstone, a man whom I met as a youngster on the Senate subway with the late Senator Hines, another liberal lion. Talk a bit about Senator Wellstone and what his endorsement meant to you. And of course, he would then pass in a tragic plane crash 11 days before your election. What did all that mean to you?
Yeah, well, Paul Wellstone was an amazing man, and the world knows that. But the Paul Wellstone I knew was actually was a listener. He was a person who would take a moment with a person he didn't know. He was a person who didn't think that his role as a U.S. Senator made him too big and too high to listen to a person, an ordinary citizen. I remember when I was a young activist, before I even considered electoral politics at all, and I was sort of asked. I saw him in the park one day. I thought he was there for a photo op or something, and because this was in a public housing area, which was a low-income area. But I thought, this is him doing his, poor folks thing. And I asked him some tough questions, and as he didn't take offense, he answered them calmly, and then asked me what I think we should do about it. And he surprised me. I thought I assumed he was going to get defensive, tell me that he marched with Martin Luther King or something, and how dare I question him this way, and then get in his car and drive away. But he listened, and that is the Paul Wellstone who I'll always remember.
I was I think 16 years old and sitting in that Senate subway as part of one of the original close-up programs that came to Washington in 1973. Oh, yeah. And he did the same thing, absolutely the same thing. He made you feel, even though it was a very short ride on that subway, as one of the most important people he was going to be in contact with that day. Truly brilliant. Congressman Ellison, I can barely make it through books written by politicians. They tend to be soundbite and plaudit-filled and rubbish. But My Country, 'Tis of Thee was an absolutely gripping read. I really feel we see the real Keith Ellison on those pages. And I have to say, this has truly been an honor to spend some time with you here today. And our mutual friend, Ahmed Tharwat of Bel Adam, played such a huge role, as do you, in helping us understand what it means to be both an American and a member of the Muslim faith. So I want to take a moment to thank you and encourage all our readers to get a copy of My Country, 'Tis of Thee.
Have a great one, Dennis. Thank you so much.
Well, that'll do it for another edition of BookView TV. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. The name of the book again is My Country, 'Tis of Thee. It's written by Congressman Keith Ellison. He's from Minnesota 5th District. It's well worth the time taken to read it. I hope you've enjoyed watching us speak with him as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Tune in again next time when another author will sit across the Skype table from me and we'll discuss books, authors, and the craft of writing and selling them, all here on BookView TV. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us, and good night.